Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our masterclass on redox. My name is Lynn Matthews, and it is always a pleasure to be here discussing a truly revolutionary approach to health and vitality. Most of us, as we were growing up, we learned to deal with our health challenges by treating the symptoms, right? Trying to mitigate symptoms, which can be helpful, but it very rarely, if ever, addressed the root cause, right? The source of the problem. And redox is changing all that. In fact, it's changing the entire paradigm of health and wellness. If that's a new term for you, you are in wonderful company. It was for all of us. Just know that redox is the energy that powers all life. Nothing happens in my body, even your pet's bodies without a redox reaction. They are the language of the cells. They're how your cells talk to each other. It's an incredible communication network that not only helps the body protect your healthy cells, but helps the body detect, repair, and replace any damage anywhere, which if you think about that, that's quite remarkable. So tonight's masterclass is going to explore not only what is redox, but why it's so profound and why it may be of interest to you. People come and learn about this for a number of reasons. You might find yourself in several of these reasons, but many people come because they have a health challenge. Or maybe someone they love has a health challenge and they're trying to explore whether redox could be the missing link. Maybe you're a practitioner or a wellness center and you're working with clients who have health challenges and you're trying to see how this could complement the modalities you're already working with. Some people are here because they like to be proactive with their health. I think most of us learn as we move on in age that it is much easier to maintain our health than it is to regain it once you've lost it. And I think all of us realize that I heard someone say last week they'd rather invest in their health than pay to recover it. And I thought, amen to that. Some people are here because they are athletic. Maybe they like to bike, hike, run, work out. Maybe they just want more energy at the end of the day to do the things they love, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about the athletic benefits. You don't have to be a professional or Olympic athlete to get those same benefits of faster recovery, more endurance, more mental focus. All of us could use that in our day-to-day life, right? And some people are here because of the anti-aging benefits with redox. All of us are getting older, right? We're 24 hours older right now than we were at this time yesterday. But what if there was a way to turn back the clock, not just on the physical signs that we can see when we look in the mirror, but those physical signs that we see are truly a reflection of the oxidative stress and the breakdown that's also happening internally, right, on our cells, our organs. Well, what if there was a way that we could truly interrupt the breakdown of aging? Dr. Hoffman's going to talk about that tonight as well. The last reason that people look at this, and this is not something that we have time to get into on Tuesday nights, we do this on Saturday on this same Zoom and same password at 11 o'clock East Coast time. But when you have a cutting edge technology like redox that literally can impact every single person on the planet, there is an opportunity. There's an opportunity to make a difference in this world beyond the difference you've already made in your life already. And if that's something that resonates with you, if you believe your purpose is to make a difference in the world and to help others, get back to the person that invited you to this and they can share a little bit more about that, what it's like to link arms with like-minded people to help educate about this incredible technology. But it's my sincere hope tonight that you're going to get a sense of just how profound this is and why your friend wanted you to learn about it. This masterclass, well, let me back up. It's all about getting your questions answered as well. That's why we have Dr. Hoffman here. She does an amazing presentation and then she will answer your questions. Just a little caveat. The company decided not to sell out to a pharmaceutical company. And as such, they are basically considered a supplement under the FDA's guide. As such, we can't address specific disease names and conditions. We're not allowed to do it. That's not compliant. We want to answer your questions. So if you can phrase those questions, perhaps with symptoms you're experiencing or functions that have been impacted, that will allow Dr. Hoffman to answer them compliantly, because we want this to be around for decades to come. So with that, I'd love to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Carolyn Hoffman. She is a board certified traditional naturopath. She's been working in the field of natural health for more than 25 years. She's been working with this technology for over 8 years, and she sits on the medical professionals board for this company. That is a volunteer position. But what I love about her background is she not only brings decades of practical experience as a practitioner to the table, but she also has been able to kind of peek behind the curtains and get a deeper knowledge of not just redox in general, but also the products that evolved out of decades of research. And she has just an eloquent way of explaining it and analogies that make it so that all of us, whether we are in the science world or not, can truly understand how profound this is. So, Carolyn, I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Lynn. I was just thinking when you say, we're 24 hours older than we were last week when we were doing this. You and I are about 6 years older than when we first started sharing this time together. And it's really kind of interesting how I don't think that you look any different than when we first began. So that's a testament to what we have to share with you this evening. I want to thank you all for taking the time. I know we're all super busy. So I commend people when you are willing and you are interested in learning about something that is probably new to you. I think, Lynn and I always talk about the fact that this may be a new phrase, a new term, but it isn't actually a new field of science. It's been heavily studied since the late 90s, and there are 6 Nobel Prizes in this arena. But, sometimes we come across things because science is really moving so much quicker nowadays, and there are so many things coming at us. So I'm glad that you're here. I want to share with you that I hope by the time we finish this evening, at the very least, you will look at this and kind of say to yourself, this makes common sense. This is really foundational. It is one of those things I need in my hopper for making sure that I can put myself in the driver's seat of how I want to influence my longevity. And it's not really how many years we're on this planet, but it's how healthy we are while we're here. And this is what this is going to speak to. I am going to share my screen. Let me just get rid of that one for us for a second. And I'll share the other screen so that we can look and learn together. We talk about this as really the key to health and longevity, as I just mentioned. And this is really where we're sitting. We're sitting right at the foundation of how our bodies are created in the very first place. I always think of this as the software language communication system of our cells, to be able to make sure that they are in peak levels of communication right across the whole body, being able to share information about when there's challenges, wherever those challenges are taking place in our system, and being able to recruit and innately know what it is our body needs to do to be able to heal. I think the beautiful thing is that we are designed to heal. We're not designed to promote sickness, but our lifestyles nowadays are certainly pushing us that way. And I think when I came into this field about 25 years ago, I would often think that, to be proactive and be doing things that maybe a lot of other people weren't doing, and cleaning yourself out, thinking about your diet and all of those things would have been a great start. But nowadays I think we're all struggling drastically, and really to maintain optimal health, it's not an occasional 1 month cleanse or a 1 week cleanse or an annual cleanse. This is something that we really need to be doing every single day. And so I'm going to share with you all of the aspects of what we're talking about here. Now, we have 70 to 100 trillion cells that make up our tissues, our organs, and the systems of the human body. All of those are guided by genetic expression. And even by our 30s, we know from a double-blind placebo-controlled study that we've run that even in our 30s, our genetic expression is already down-regulating. We're not really feeling any of that, not truly, but that's aging is already well underway at that point, and so things are already changing. So why do we change? Well, that real story isn't what we're seeing on the outside necessarily, although the outside does reflect the root problem, and that's what's happening underneath the surface within all of those cells. When we're young, we communicate much like having 5 bars on our phone. We are super connected, everything is running beautifully, communication is nice and strong, and we can achieve the things we want to achieve. We all know what that's like if we're in an area with spotty Wi-Fi or poor cell phone service. Communication is sometimes non-existent, or at best really confused and not really effective. And that's really what we can kind of compare as we age. So what are all these diseases above the line, as we may consider it with what those things are listed there? What do they have in common? Well, if everything looks fine on the surface, every stressor that we're experiencing, whether that's toxins, whether it's poor sleep, maybe it's an infection, is invisibly accumulating under the surface. And if the body actually lacks the resources to do the healing that is necessary to combat whatever's going wrong, or maybe that call for help because we've got spotty Wi-Fi going on between our cells, if that goes unheard, that's where disease begins to fester and become something that eventually, when accumulated enough below the surface, will become something above the surface and be given some kind of medical title. So, if all of the strategies that we may be employing nowadays in order to try to maintain health rely on one thing, they are different types of stressors, nevertheless. So, whether you're doing keto, whether you're doing ice packs, whether you're using vitamins or even peptides, they're all trying to provocate a response from the body to attract and build healing. But actually, where everything starts is much deeper than that, is at this foundational level of what we call redox signaling molecules. These signaling switches are totally different than physical substances that are provoking the body to do something. So very few people, I think, nowadays are necessarily asking, is my body actually able to respond to all the things I'm pushing at it, even though I may have great intentions and certainly hopes for health? Now, the language of the cells to communicate and control cellular damage and repair the body are through this medium of redox signaling. And redox homeostasis, in other words, every time the body sends up a signal to say there's some damage somewhere, and it's met by an equal support system to create healing, that equals health. And that's the beautiful part. Now, if you're kind of curious about the science and, what are the mechanisms of redox within the human body, this is a great site to go to. And it'll also pull you toward any published studies that can explain it a lot more. Redox isn't new, as I said. It's been studied for decades. And it's literally the critical force behind every single function in the human body because it's involved at a mitochondrial level in every cell. We have 6 Nobel Prizes, as I mentioned. The first one came when they established that nitric oxide was a single redox molecule and beneficial in cardiovascular health. And that really opened the door for millions and millions of published studies that you'll see on the NIH websites. And they're showing the impact of the redox system as a whole and, when it's out of balance and what it leads to. And they're all hoping that they can create a drug because this is the field of health science that is desperately trying to established what these things do and how they fall apart when there's disease. And so far, no one's actually produced a drug. And we'll talk about why, because we're not actually dealing with something that is a physical material in the way that we're used to thinking about supplements or even medicine, for example. But here you can see just a brief example of universities or research facilities worldwide that are deeply invested in redox biology and medicine. Now, we've had over 22, 23 years of world congresses in Paris, France, and that brings together the unified science field around the world to share the latest research. Now, our cells are producing about 70 million molecules of ATP per second. Thank goodness, otherwise we wouldn't be alive. And that is what's fueling the human cell and the metabolic function. Now, the Krebs cycle doesn't just make the fuel. It creates, as part of its byproduct, these redox signaling molecules. Once upon a time, because science couldn't really study these tiny, tiny microns, they actually felt that they were really just a useless part of the Krebs cycle. But they now realize that these signaling molecules are the messengers that tell the energy where to go. It also tells the energy when we don't need to be going somewhere. In other words, switch it off. It makes decisions about how to drive the use of that redox signaling messenger, what to build, what to repair. In other words, it's literally involved in every downstream action. So oxidants, I like to think of those, if you think of the OX in oxidants and the RAD in reductants, that's what science puts together to form this word redox. Oxidants are the positive charges, reductants are the negative charges. And when the oxidants sound the alarm bell, what they're basically saying to the body is that there are cells that are stressed and are damaged, and it's recruiting the reductants to respond with like the fire and rescue in a 911 call. So reductants actually coordinate that response, that repair process. Maybe it's regeneration, maybe it's genetic expression. Now, health, when we're in a state of really good health with fast acting redox signaling molecules communicating beautifully, health is fast, responses are quick. And disease is when the help doesn't arrive because basically the communication fails. So ATP we can think of as providing the power to the network system. Redox signals literally direct it, highlighting where the system is literally out of sync. And health is metabolic balance, neither too fast nor too slow. And those are the adjustments that the body's making every single second we're alive. Now, biology, sadly, has this built-in process of aging, and it doesn't start in our 30s or 40s. It actually begins as early as puberty. We start to lose these signals at 1% per year. Every year we're going to be on the planet. So a 10% reduction per decade is pretty significant because it's not simply having fewer of these redox signaling molecules, being able to produce less of them, but the ones we have become very naturally, because we're aging, far less efficient than the ones that a child has. Now, if we think about it, we know that young children, teenagers are super resilient. Right? They can run around all day. They're not complaining the next day about having been playing with their friends all day and they've got sore muscles and need to stay in bed for a day to recover. They're out and about doing things all the time. They heal very fast. If they fall over, they bounce. They don't break bones like we do when we're later in age, and that can be critical. So until 2009, there was literally not much we could personally do to really influence our level of redox biology with aging. And you could change it to a certain extent if you were a marathon runner, but I don't think too many of us are doing marathon running every single day in order to maintain redox biology. But we're going to talk about what altered in 2009. So after 10 years of publicly traded research, Verdis Norton, who you can see on the screen here, helped to bring forward a scientific breakthrough that once upon a time was literally thought unattainable. The notion that these highly volatile molecules that are all about chemistry could be stabilized outside the human body was something that science said couldn't happen. It's just not possible to actually harness something in a bioactive form and stabilize it outside the human body in a way that could be beneficial or usable to anyone. And until 2007, that was actually true. Science had been researching these exact molecules, but they only had a lifespan of about 10 minutes. We can't do an awful lot with something that doesn't hang around longer than that. But Verdis got to experience those benefits because he was using one of the little machines where they would generate these molecules. And so he experienced improved health. So he knew that there was something fascinating about this. But in 2007, this intervention that we're going to talk more about at the end of the call resulted in bioavailable, non-toxic solution of redox signaling molecules. And this is designed to support us right at the cellular communication level. And it's very different. It's not the way in which nutrients can do that. Nutrients don't contain these highly volatile redox signaling molecules, and we're working in a very different way to support our overall biology when we come to this. Now, inside the body, our cells are generating redox signaling molecules every second we're alive. And they produce it from the saline solution within the human body. If we think about it, if we go into hospital because there's some kind of tragedy or we're scheduled for some surgery or whatever, we're going to be given saline. And that's because that's what bathes the cells. Now, the body actually uses that saline in the mitochondrial function to produce these redox signaling molecules. And the breakthrough was learning how to create a stabilized version outside the body. So we use an electrochemical process, and we use the saline, same as the human body does, and we transform it by breaking those bonds up, just like the mitochondria do, into the four elements of sodium, chloride, hydrogen, and oxygen. And the body plays this really clever game, rather like a game of Scrabble. You're given four tiles, and it says how many words can you make from those four tiles. Well, the body's breaking it up into four molecules, and it makes multiple types of redox signaling molecules. And we do the same thing. We transform that saline into redox signaling by the chemistry of pH, salinity, temperature, voltage, and amperage. And what ends up in that bottle is bioactive, stabilized redox signaling molecules that are literally identical to what is in us. And the beauty of that is that this means that what's in that bottle is not foreign to the human body. It's already making it. And that's the part of it that's fabulous because we can't be allergic to it because it's literally bioidentical. What is fascinating also is that from clinical studies, we know that consuming this product is totally non-toxic. You can consume a whole bottle a day if you had something very serious going on and you really needed a lot of additional healing support. And people who have very chronic, very serious issues sometimes will do that because that helps their body recover and really get back into a place of better health. Now, we shouldn't need that much. And we hope that maintenance or aging is certainly not going to bring us to that state, but we do know that it's totally non-toxic. So we have something that's non-toxic. You can't be allergic to it. And one other part of this that I find absolutely amazing as a naturopath working with physical supplements, which are not true of those, is that this is transparent to medication. What that means is if you're on medication and you're considering this, you don't have to change anything. In fact, we don't want you to change anything. It's not our job to tell you to come off your medication, but you can safely add this in and benchmark the changes and watch your body decide how it's going to help you find a better level of health. Now, you may not need all the medication that you're currently on as your body moves its way back into a better space. And it's quite common for all people to see changes taking place and to check up with their doctor. And the doctor does some other tests or checks up with blood markers and things like that. I might say, well, it's really interesting. We don't need as much medication and we're going to have to lower that quantity or maybe even take you off it. This is our FDA registered NSF and GMP compliant production facility. And this is in Utah. In this past week, we had about 23 of us go to this facility and tour the facility. There's quite a number of people on this call who got to see this up close and personal, as they say. This is the only place in the world where we make these stabilized redox signaling molecules. We have 7 patents and over 1,000 trade secrets on our process. So it's never been able to be reverse engineered. You can't take what's in this bottle. This is a gold one, which celebrated our 15th year, but you can't pour it out and analyze it because it's not about ingredients, it's about process. But the beautiful and very different thing about it is the fact that because we protect and manufacture this to such high standards, we also get to support people all over the world with this product. From here, we ship to 20 different locations around the world, and that supplies the local market in 35 countries. So if you're on the call tonight and you're in the Far East, for example, you want to be able to get this product. If you're in South America, you're going to be able to get this product. We can help so many people around the world with an amazing technology. And that was one of the reasons that pulled me into bringing this into my practice, because I was frustrated that very often I could help people overseas. I knew the challenges that they had, but then when we tried to get products that could support them in their journey, they weren't available because so many products are being pulled on the market worldwide as our ability to control our own health becomes more and more controlled. So I love the fact that I can support people in 35 countries with this one technology. Now, James Watson highlighted redox signaling imbalance as a central factor to disease, such as diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. He's well published in the Lancet, and he actually raised bigger questions about, how many conditions begin with a breakdown at cellular communication. He had this feeling that basically all disease was a redox deficiency. That's a kind of an interesting statement. And I would believe now, having been in this field for 9 years, that I would actually agree with him when I look at it, that how we're able to support any particular type of challenge that the body has, we're able to come out of thinking symptom and go to the system of the human body. And therefore, we don't have limitations on being able to support the body finding a better place of health. So for 15 years, ASEA has been making products that literally have the same redox signaling molecules as your own body makes. And this has become our famous blue bottle. Now, we are, as I mentioned, the first and only cell signaling supplement on the market. We've been here 15 years. No one else has done what we've done. And we have created this entirely new category. Countries and communities around the world don't really know what to do with us because there isn't a redox category. So they dump us into the nutritional arena over here, but we're considered a food in Europe and we're considered a water in Asia. So we have to conform to whatever requirements fit that particular market. Now we're classified, as I said, differently. And we don't fit, which makes it kind of tricky because we're so used to reading labels. And if we read a label here and we look at what the two ingredients are that fit the requirements of a traditional supplement in this country, then we'll see two things written on that: water and sodium chloride, salt and water. And so people who don't understand the complexity of creating redox signaling molecules get very confused because they think that this is just a bottle of salt water, which it absolutely isn't. We certainly couldn't have been on the market for 15 years selling salt water, and we certainly wouldn't have been able to see the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of changes that often are miraculous with people's health achievements from just selling a saltwater production. So how do we know that it's not that? Well, if you look on the right, you're going to see BQC and GLU. Those are two redox technology laboratories in Spain and Germany. They specialize in understanding redox, they study it, and they also test our product as a third-party independent testing space. And they put that label on every bottle. You're going to see that. So in other words, that's a guarantee. We're not buying salt water. We're buying bioactive, stabilized redox signaling molecules. And you see on the left, we meet multiple standards of production that enable us to support Olympic athletes and the athletic community because we have nothing toxic in our product whatsoever. So the beautiful thing about this is, regardless of what your concerns are or what your goals are, we can safely say this cannot hurt, it can only help. And that's a beautiful space to be in. Some approaches, such as pharmaceuticals, for example, will force the body to make changes. They're fast and they're targeted because they're not natural and they push the body into a space. Now, sometimes we need that, and that's okay, but it's not about health. The body's inner doctor doesn't work on demand in quite the same way. And so we have to kind of understand if we are in the space of natural health, in other words, supporting your body's function to do the work it knows how to do, the body has a process over time. And the biggest shifts overall when you're doing any kind of natural therapy is really in the month 3 and 4. Month 4 begins to have system balance, and then we start to really build on the foundational growth that we've achieved over the first 3 months. So clinical observations for us, which are fascinating, and which should be out, I think, in the next month or so in a peer-reviewed study, is that within the first, let's go back, the first 60 days on this product, you're going to have about a 16% marked reduction in inflammation. And that's actually taking cytokine markers, blood markers that are very well respected as being indicative of how much inflammation someone holds within their body. But the biggest shift takes place at 120 days. At 120 days, we've got an 89% drop in inflammatory markers. That's huge, because I'm sure most people know nowadays that inflammation causes disease and disease causes inflammation. So we want you to track your overall health, and we give you a benchmark tracker to do this. We like you to start today before you begin the product. Check everything from your energy to your sleep quality, whether you wake up or whether you sleep but you don't wake up healthy in the morning, you're feeling kind of sluggish. Your stress levels, that has a huge impact on creating too much cortisol and really promoting a lot of inflammation and disease. Hormone balance, whether that's libido, whether that's insulin, blood sugar markers, we want you to track those if you are taking insulin medication of any type. Focus, attention, memory, all of those, this has an enormous impact on cognitive effects. We cross the blood-brain barrier, so we're directly impacting that for the good. Looking at things like endurance and recovery, and we'll talk about why our Olympic athletes use it for that benefit. Skin, take photos of your skin. We always tend to forget when things have changed. It's like, did that really change? So it's always good to have a documented inventory, especially of the face if you're using our Renew 28. Discomfort, we'll talk about how to actually experience how quickly the body picks up and uses redox molecules when it comes to that kind of category. Digestion, for example, eyes, and really any other thing that you want to track. Now, you would drink 4 ounces a day, which would be half of one of these packets if you're using the pouches. 2 ounces in the morning, 2 in the evening. Now, at the end of the first week, only 10 to 15% of people are going to be able to identify what the body's been doing with this additional redox. So if you haven't seen anything, just even something very small change, we say double up, drink, 8 ounces, which would be a whole pouch a day, because we want to super saturate the body, bring that redox potential back up, really super mobilize the healing capacity within the body, and then help accelerate those outcomes. At the end of month 1, what we know is that 50% of people are really excited about the changes. Month 3 is 90%. And we've always said, up until recently, because of our new studies, do this for 3 months. I really want to change that slide now so that we can say do this for 4 months, because we know at 120 days how much that inflammatory marker is going to have dropped. Now, I want to show Rosie. This is our remarkable journey. And I show this because in 25 years of being in this field, I don't have a single supplement that you would have to ingest, digest, and assimilate that could do what this does. This is why I came to the conclusion that this is the single most influential product technology that I've ever had the privilege of working with. If you look on the right, here Rosie is at 84. She doesn't look particularly healthy, 84 either. If you look at the lack of energy in the eyes, you look at the amount of oxidative stress on the outside, which is clearly a reflection of a lot of things going on the inside. Her son's a doctor, and he asked her to start using this. And in the second photo, this one here, She didn't think at 7 weeks that it was really doing much. Fortunately, he'd taken the photographic evidence and he was able to show her the photo, and she said, "Oh, I guess it is making a change. I guess I'll continue." The third photo is her at 87. I mean, look at even just at that point, here we are 4 years later, the life in her eyes, her brightness. I mean, you can see her face is so entirely different than this first photo. And here she is at 91. There is nothing else that could literally interrupt the breakdown of aging in the way that this is doing, because we're working at that foundational level, not cherry picking the liver to support, or the stomach or the heart. We're not cherry picking. We're working in the way that the system is designed to work across every single cell. And it's just a beautiful thing to look at here, that we can help this woman really recreate her health. I don't know anybody who could go from 84 to 91. And it's hard to really assess how much younger she looks, but it's probably at least 10 years younger than she is here on the right, for sure. Oh, we talk about this as being broad spectrum, the liquid. What's in this gel, which was a 5-year project to find something that wouldn't activate those molecules, but could support it in a topical application, because people were spraying the liquid over their body, getting benefit from discomfort, seeing improvements with skin, all sorts of things were happening, but it's a little messy. So they asked if we could put it into a gel, and we have the Renew 28. We shake this one because it is the same as the liquid, and it only has a minimal amount of a kind of bentonite clay. You can see that it's totally clear. And that's designed so that we can suspend those molecules and you can apply them to the skin. This doesn't need rubbing in, it will dry off, but it is actually working the moment it touches your skin. This is not about absorption. Molecules of this nature are very different. They go to work the moment they're in contact with something that's organic, and we're organic. And here you can see part of our 28-day clinical study. We have this beautiful dynamic in 28 days where our skin might have slowed down to a 90-day turnover. We are accelerating it by 16% in that 28-day period. You are literally reversing the aging of skin here. We have 20 to 23% improvement in fine lines and wrinkles and texture and tone. And you can see the evidence of that. Torrent Labs study is really, I think, pretty amazing, because this is an 8-week double-blind placebo-controlled study. We were curious to see how much we impact genetic expression. This is an incredibly well-respected laboratory that specializes in genetic studies. After 8 weeks, and they took healthy 35-year-olds. And why did I say earlier that even at 35, genes are turning down, they're switching off? Not because they tested all of their genes before they started this study, and they were turning off. And I said they didn't really feel it, but they were already not working as efficiently as they were when they were younger. They put them on 8 ounces a day. This would be like 1 pouch a day. And at the end of 8 weeks, they rechecked their genetic expression, and they found that 100% of the people drinking that 8 ounces a day had a 20 to 31% sustained and beneficial improvement in 5 genetic pathways. That's pretty astonishing. You don't get that in double-blind placebo study. You never get anything that's tested and it works 100% of the time. That doesn't happen. And interestingly, if you see at the bottom of the slide, you'll see we gave the placebo group the plain saline that we use before it becomes the redox. And somehow the genes didn't want to respond, which is also an unusual statistic. But you can see here, whether you are just a proactive person who wants to be in charge of their health, you want to live well and live long, whether you're trying to achieve something better for your health and overcome something, it doesn't really matter, because here this is going to impact all of us. Improving our immune system. This is our innate immune signaling system. Being able to help cardiovascular health and support arterial elasticity. Improving gut health and digestive enzyme production. As a digestive specialist, that was something I saw before I saw these results. And when I saw the results, it was like, now I know why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. Here it is, everybody having much better digestive health as a result of it. And being able to get off a lot of supplements that we were taking as a result of that, too. Modulating hormone and balancing vitality and wellness, supporting the body's ability to defend us against external stresses, toxins, pesticides, fungicides, you name it, whether it's emotional stress, all of those things, food stresses, all of those things cause challenges, and the body needs to be able to defend and respond to that to keep us in health. And maintaining a healthy inflammatory response due to physical exercise. That just means being alive. Um, each of these genes is like a doorway. It opens a door and it has signaling pathways, and redox is turning on and off the switches according to whatever's necessary for the body to heal. And you can see in blue the things that those pathways relate to. And if you've got challenges with any of those health conditions, then you might know that gene pathway is not as strong as it should be. This would be good for you. But the fourth one is the natural inbuilt system that the body has in every cell to respond to inflammation. Turning on the NRF2, which is like the 911, and bringing in glutathione, our master antioxidant, from every cell to solve the problem. And so we said, well, if we affect that inflammatory pathway, I wonder if there'd be some way that we could tweak our science to be able to just play that note, so to speak, rather like a chord on a piano, and really just target that inflammatory response to be able to help the body deal with it. And after 3 or 4 years of research out of Western Australia University and also Bath University in England, we produced something called redox gold. So this is slightly different species of the redox liquid, and we found that noble gold, molecular gold, could help activate it and target it. So I think of this as like the spotlight in the theater, right? We're going to spotlight whatever is causing us discomfort, maybe at range of motion. And so this is a beautiful product. If you haven't tried this, get with the person that invited you to this call. And if that's not possible, get hold of some of this as quickly as possible and go play with it and see for yourself, because this is about relief and recovery. Now, we've been using the white one for 14 years, since 2014, and it would affect things that hurt, but nowhere near as quickly as this would. So if you've got something that hurts, rate that level of discomfort. Now, you don't have to shake this one in the same way. It doesn't break down in quite the same way, but you will see that it is also just clear. And if you get it in the light when you're on your own, you'll see that there are flecks of 24 karat gold in there. This one needs to be massaged in, it's thicker, and massaging is what activates that redox signaling and hits that inflammatory pathway. Start checking your watch once you've put it on you. If you haven't, our goal is to get you to a 0 as quickly as possible. If you aren't at a 0 for discomfort by 3 minutes, apply it again to the same spot and also put it over either side of the neck around the vagus nerve. At 10 minutes, if you're not at a 0 or you've started to see a shift but you're still not at a 0, then just repeat it with this one. We think of these as lockstep because one affects every cell in the body and this one just plays on that inflammatory cord. And sometimes the same thing together can really just pull it all together. And at the third time, apply it over the area that is uncomfortable and put it again on either side of the neck. Now, what you're going to see is 9 out of 10 people don't even need to get to the second and third phase. Sometimes it's seconds. Remember, it's about your body up-regulating, and it's not just about the quick response. It's actually about the fact that if you keep repeating it, you're teaching the cells how to do the recovery, in other words, learn how to heal. We study thermographic imaging because that tells you where there's a lot of heat that comes from the body when there's a problem, where rapid changes in the body take place, when there's a response at a cellular stress. And so consistent and increased glutathione goes alongside this NRF2. So this is the beautiful effects we can see here, that a lot of people had, really high levels of heat coming off in the red and yellow. And then with an application of it and waiting clinically for over 15 minutes, you can see how much it all cools it down and calms down. Now, it's not an analgesic. The reason it cools down is because the body's responding to that heat and making changes. So we have these two topical applications, one for the relief, recovery, and discomfort in sports or activity, and then for the anti-aging side of things on the right. Now, when you bring your cellular communication back online by raising that redox potential, what you're going to see, as I mentioned, is all these diverse ways in which the body responds. So we're no longer thinking about, can I use something specifically for breathing, or because I've got a client who's losing her hair and her hormones are all over the place, or maybe it's a skin challenge, right? We're moving from these symptoms into these systems. And these are examples of all things that I've seen with people. We want to support cellular communication and the total stress load that we have. That's a really important factor. So we're not looking at this quick fix piece, we're looking at cumulative effect. And you'll find the longer that you're on this, the more layers of work the body continues to do over time. And so the question we have to ask, which is the fun piece to play with it, is how much do you need? How much does your body need? You might do well on 4 ounces. Somebody else may need 8. Someone else might do fine on 6. We start you with 4. If you're not seeing a shift pretty quickly, it's like filling this glass. We say go to the 8, fill up the glass. And when you've got to a really great place where your body's feeling amazing, then you can play with it. Find out what the sweet spot is for you. It's not going to be the same for everyone, but the two keys are things that you have control over are how much you drink and how long you continue to use it. Athletic edge, I mentioned we support Olympic athletes. In our clinical studies on athletes, we see that they get 29% faster recovery and endurance. That plays out in our lives. We don't have to be Olympic athletes. We get the same effects. It doesn't work differently on them than it does on us. So that means 29% increase in endurance and recovery in your life. And what could that mean for you? Sharper mental acuity is another reason that they use it. Faster reflexes, and we can demonstrate that very quickly with this one. You'll see in literally seconds how much faster the body responds. If you want to know more about the athletes, go to the Discover Redox page and look on the intro page for the athletes. Yeah, I mentioned that we are the first and only company in this field. No one else has been able to teach us about redox because no one else has done what we've done. So we've always poured hundreds of millions of dollars into research with renowned spaces to teach us about our product, to teach us about the potential for future redox-based product technologies and how we can broaden that space of an amazing life-changing approach to overall health and longevity. And if you want to learn more about those, you can look on our Redox Science page. We have two resources, which I think are always the fun piece. The science is great, but I do love to look at what do people actually see. I've used products that have got bucket loads of science behind, and then in practice, they just don't really seem to see the outcome for people. So go look at our Facebook group. People just post their own stories there. They're not, we don't control this. We don't ask for it. People do their own stories. You'll see photos, blood test results, x-rays, all sorts of things. They're sharing their experiences. And if you came on earlier, you would have heard one of the interviews that we park on Real Redox Results from Stories again, and you can click on any of these things to go to those interviews. We're going to come to the other equally important part, another product in a sense, right? The ethos of this company. And Lynn's going to take us through that because she does such a beautiful job with that. And I'm going to replace her and bring her over for this piece.
Thanks, Carolyn. I hope you're beginning to just get some sense of how profound it is that for the first time ever, we've got something that can address health at the root, at the cellular level. And it's all because of the vision and the integrity of one man, Vertus Norton. He just, when he came across this, he intuitively knew that what he had was groundbreaking. And initially, this guy was the vice president of international strategy for Kraft Foods, big corporate guy, Fortune 50. So he was looking at that as a business play. He was going to take control of the molecules, get them stabilized, and then sell them. And he was thinking of selling it to a pharmaceutical company because he thought that would be the best way to get out to the world. But when he realized that that big pharma company was not going to make it publicly available, he had a decision to make. He had gotten the product on 40 different people, all with varying levels of health challenges. These were friends and family members, church members. Six of those 40 had life-threatening illnesses where they had basically been told to get their affairs in order. And so he, after 2 weeks of using the technology, when he went back to check in with everyone, those people were no longer in that situation. And so when he went back to the pharmaceutical company, he said, look, this is making a huge impact in people's lives. I, they need it. And they basically told him, look, if you take this check, and it was tens of millions of dollars, if you take this check, you walk away. People deal with their health in the ways they can. If you want this, walk away. So he had to make a decision, right? Make millions of dollars or figure out a way to get this to the world and to all these people that were already using it. And he said no. He said no to the money. And that was when he decided to create this company that we all know and love called ASEA. He looked at how he could bring it to market. He knew, you saw what Dr. Carolyn said, when you look at the bottle and it just says sodium chloride and water, a lot of people would think it was salt water because people don't understand redox yet. It's not a familiar term to most people. So he knew it could not sit on a store shelf. And so he opted to go with word of mouth or network marketing. He also knew that sometimes that industry did not have the best reputation. So he wanted to create a company that was very transparent, where people and purpose and principles would always weigh in more than the economics and the egos of the people involved. And that started the culture or the ethos of this company 15 years ago. And that culture to this day runs very, very deep, not just in the field with all of us who are sharing it, but even on the corporate side. Vertus Norton wanted this to be his legacy to humanity, and not just the product, but the company itself. And ASEA won the business opportunity. And so this is a company that values people. It is a company that encourages cultivating relationships, not just making transactions, right? It's a company that believes that being of service to others and doing what's best for them is much more important than simply selling someone redox. And honestly, and Dr. Carolyn and I have talked about this for a long time. I've been with this company for 12 years, and that to me is just as important as these groundbreaking products. This is an ethos that most companies don't have. For a lot of companies now with corporate greed, the bottom line is everything, right? Making a profit. They're beholden to their shareholders. This is a private company, so they're not beholden to the shareholders. They can make decisions that are best for you and I. And that is one of the things I love about this company. It's the ethos. We get to talk a little bit more about that other times, but I just love that on Tuesdays we get to mention it, because I do believe whether this is something that you're looking at just for yourself and your own health journey, whether you're a practitioner bringing this into your practice, or whether you are thinking that, I would love to be able to educate and share this with others. Whatever the reason is you're looking at this, I think it's just as important to know who stands behind this as it is to know about the technology itself. So, Carolyn, I'm going to turn this back to you. I saw quite a few questions coming through.
Yes, we do have quite a few questions. So let me just stop record.